Welcome, Wargamers. Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and today we are going to be answering a question directly from one of my patrons, and it's a good question too, and it's all about Archaon and the nature of his chaos boons and mutations and all those kinds of things. So stick around for that. One thing I want to say right up here up top, if you like this video and you want to support the channel in any way, please consider becoming one of my patrons over on Patreon. These guys mean the world to me, and seriously, if you're a patron or a member here on YouTube, at any point you can shoot me an email or message me, and I will absolutely do a topic for you if you have an idea for a video, and there's enough to kind of work with in terms of content. These folks directly support me, the channel, my wife, our cat, everything like that, and it means the world to me, so thank each and every one of you. Now, I'll throw the question up here, but I'm also going to read through it for those of you who are busy. How has Archaon not devolved into some kind of hideous chaos monstrosity? Is it like Mr. Burns in The Simpsons where he has every disease, so none of them are able to do him in with that kind of like equilibrium? Do the Chaos Gods hold back the negatives of their influence on him so he can continue to operate? Which kind of hints that they would be aware of the end result of their quote-unquote gifts. Does he have the power to keep these various, taints and that kind of stuff at bay, or is he actually quite twisted, putrid, and ever-changing, and we just don't see it because he's never without his armor? And this question is by Brian. So Brian, let me just go ahead and say, I think the theme that we're trying to see is what is the nature of chaos mutations, and then aside from that, how does that apply to someone like Archaon himself? Now, for those of you who are new to Age of Sigmar, or Chaos Armies, I suppose really the big four, so like Disciples of Tzeentch, Hedonites of Slaanesh, Blades of Khorne, and Maggotkin of Nurgle. Those are the four that are aligned to specific Chaos Gods. Skaven are there, but they don't really mutate. But the core four, whenever they, see a follower or a disciple that they value, do some amazing achievement, rose in the ranks, did something to impress their deity, or did some grandiose act in their deity's name, they'll often give a boon. That is to say, a blessing of some kind. And these often start off as very, very small. It could be something like, you gain some muscle, maybe put on some poundage, that kind of stuff. Maybe you get a cool artifact or a familiar, so like a magical entity that kind of comes with you. There's a story of a Tzeentchian leader who gets like a magic bird that follows him around and kind of helps him navigate the world. One of the most common ones that you will see is immortality. So like not true immortality, but just you don't age anymore. And so you can still die if you're killed in battle, but it's like the Chaos God is saying, okay, you did pretty good, but let's see if you can keep this going, and just kind of keeps kicking the can as far as when you would die of old age. And so that's why some of these chaos warlords, like say Korgus Kull from the Blades of Khorne book, he's hundreds of years old. He was there when Khorne first broke into Akshi back in the realm of chaos. And it's not because he, achieved some necessarily great heights, because he just kept impressing Khorne enough for Khorne to be like, yeah, let's see what else you can do. We'll keep it riding. And then he got bigger and stronger, and then he started to change. His muscular structure began to change a bit. He was given the boon, a gift of a flesh hound. And so in this way, when Chaos Warband leaders are what they call walking the path to glory, which is, your rise to stardom in the eyes of a god as you try to attain demonhood, which is the ultimate goal of all Chaos leaders, you get several gifts along the way just to, from your patrons to be like, hey, you're doing the right thing, keep going. And this is like one of the coolest, most unique things about, I guess, Warhammer historically, and that's for 40k and for fantasy and Age of Sigmar, all these things, is just the nature of chaos, the deities, and how they pour their blessings upon their followers. But it gets a little complicated from there, because that makes perfect sense, right? If you're doing something in the service of your deity, they give you a blessing. Where it gets complicated is, if you take too many blessings at once, you can fall apart. Like basically there are some people whose physical forms can't take the amount of chaotic blessings that they're trying to receive, and then if that happens, you turn into what's called a spawn. I did a whole video on chaos spawns. They're one of my favorite concepts within the context of the game. Really cool stuff. And that's just, you just become this gibbering mass of like constantly mutating flesh. You're basically used as like a war engine, but nothing else. You have no sentience, no mind. You probably have just enough of self in there to be in eternal agony, but that's about it. And then one step down from that are mutations that you're like is this good? You know, like for example, like a Slaanesh hero getting a crab claw. It's like, why do I need a crab claw? I can't write with this. Or growing like obscenely long horns from your head. It's like, this doesn't help anybody. Now I need new helmets. You know what I mean? Like there are boons that are just straight good. And then there's this tier that are like just different. You know, like they have pros and cons. And then there is that final tier of like, this is just all bad. So with that being said, let's talk about Archaon the Everchosen. This is the preeminent mortal hero. He is basically a chaos champion that has risen through the ranks, and he's catered to the favor of each of the chaos gods to get what he wants, but he doesn't give them what they want. By this I mean, essentially, he started being a chaos undivided champion who was just kind of rising in the ranks, gaining glory, all these kinds of things. Nurgle would come to him and say, hey, if you work for me, I'll give you a ton of power. And Archaon's like, no, I'm not working solely for you. I'm working for all four of you. You're all going to give me your blessings. And I'm not going to pay allegiance to any one, like in particular, of the four of you. And then Khorne comes. Hey, I see you killing a lot of people. Looking good down there. Hey, listen, if you dedicate yourself to me and only me, I'll give you XYZ. He says, nope, I don't want that. I want all of your blessings. You know, again, he just repeats himself. And so what essentially is Archaon's thing is that he essentially does the bidding of all four of the chaos gods, because they all kind of want the same thing. They want the destruction of order factions, the chaos realm poured into the mortal realms, but he refuses to give sole allegiance to any of them. So he pits them against each other in this way. Now you might be thinking, well, why don't they just stop giving him blessings, right? Like, why don't they all just get on the same page and be like, well, okay, we're just not going to support this guy. We'll go find champions of our own. And the answer is because Archaon gets results. He's not a normal champion who just goes around. He's collected a slew of artifacts, and his mount Dorgar is super crazy awesome, can like shapeshift and absorb things. Like he's a super BA character, and so they all desperately want him on their side. So if Nurgle was to say, you know what, forget this, and kind of pull his blessings back or stop acknowledging Archaon, well, that leaves the chance that one of the other chaos gods is going to get him in service to him. And so all four of the chaos gods have to play the game with Archaon. They give him some blessings, some power, some influence, let him command some troops to achieve their ends, while at the same time, he has them all working for him. I'm taking these blessings, and I'm not going to pledge my sole allegiance to any one of you. So fundamentally, Brian's question is, how is he taking all of these blessings from Nurgle and Khorne and Tzeentch and, Slaanesh, but not changing? Because when you look at Archaon's model, he's just a dude, right? He fundamentally looks like a dude, riding a giant, awesome beast. And my answer to this, beyond like general inconsistency with how chaos things operate, I mean, that's the shortcut, right? It's just chaos is so crazy, maybe it just doesn't affect them. It's a very uneventful answer and very uninteresting. But there is always this possibility that, he is just so mighty, whether inherently or because of the artifacts he has all around him, that he has enough capacity, more so than the average person, to contain all these blessings. That's why he's so strong. It might also, we don't really know this because it's never really been talked about too much, but my understanding is you can deny blessings. So you can say no thank you, especially if you haven't solely dedicated yourself to one of them. So I think it is a matter of this balancing game of keeping checks and balances of like, well, I need to keep each chaos god on the cusp of thinking that they're just about to lose me, meaning I won't work for them anymore, but they want me to work for them, so I'm going to take their blessings, and kind of juggling all of the responsibility and, potential backlashes from each and every one of them. It's so awkward to try and explain, because essentially it's like a relationship between 5 people, right? 4 chaos gods plus Archaon. And they're all, quote-unquote, paying him to do a job. The payment being blessings and authority over their followers and that kind of stuff. But he doesn't want to work for any single one of them. He wants to be a private contractor who charges all of them. And that's exactly what he does. And I hope that business thing helps kind of articulate his relationship with them. Now, the question here we have is, how come he doesn't, have 1,000 tentacles or like a bajillion eyeballs or a crab claw or whatever the heck? And we mentioned before, I think part of it is he is such a mighty character that he can contain the blessings. Maybe he says no to some. But Brian brought up a great idea. So if you haven't seen this Simpsons episode he's referencing, and I have, and I absolutely love the reference, by the way. There's a scene where one of the characters, he goes into the hospital and finds out he has every disease known to man, okay? And basically all the diseases are giving him positive and negative effects, and they balance each other. So he's like, oh, I'm invincible. And the doctor's like, no, even the slightest breeze could kill you. And he's like, I'm invincible. So he is theoretically immune to every disease because he already has them. And so in this way, I could see that being an actual interesting idea, because some of the Chaos God's natures like Slaanesh and Khorne are so polar opposite. What if you did take blessings from both? Do they not negate each other, because you still end up being stronger for having the blessings of two deities, but in terms of their mutations and how much they change everything about you, physically speaking, do those kind of cancel each other out? And that's a very compelling idea. I have no idea. I've never seen it mentioned before in any of the books. If you have, let me know in the comments. But I think that's a really rad idea. But I have one more to kind of posit here before we head out for the day, and that is this idea that Archaon has somehow achieved the ability to take in the blessings and exude them in his own way. By that I mean, Archaon, he is getting power from the four Chaos Gods. He's getting their troops, their followers. But when you read books where Archaon is present, okay, so there's a few Rumgate War books. He didn't show up too much in the Soul Wars, but there are stories where he's like, walking, fighting, that kind of stuff. His presence dominates everything in the story. Like, he has this aura of just blackness around him. So even though I say like, oh yeah, he's immortal, I mean, he is a mortal who exudes pure chaos energy. And I wonder, what if the various blessings of all four deities don't negate each other in his body, but sort of like if you've ever seen like a glass prism where white light goes in one side and the rainbow shoots out the other? What if it's the four Chaos Gods putting their blessing into the prism, which is Archaon, and pure black shooting out the other side, meaning he is truly chaos undivided, because he can do this juggling act with all four deities. When all four of their blessings come into him, the true nature of chaos is revealed, undefiled, unbridled by any sort of hubris from the various deities who are giving the blessings. So it's not Nurgle, it's not Khornate, it's nothing those things. It's just true evil. It's true chaos. Again, undivided. So it's something different. It's a fifth kind of power that none of the other four can create independently. Anyway, the prism thing, that's just my own way of kind of looking at it. Totally made that up. Let me know if it sounds stupid. But I do see that as kind of the way. It's like he's receiving something from every one of them, but what he puts out, this aura of darkness around him, the way he commands his troops, the way that he doesn't pay allegiance to any of them, it's just inherently different than anything else that the other Chaos War Band leaders are putting out there. And so it's my explanation of that uniqueness. That being said, I don't think he's going to take off his helmet one day and be like surprisingly handsome. Like, I'm pretty sure there's like some things going on under the armor. It's just nothing that's so crazy that it pokes its way out like a horn or a claw or something like that. But Brian, that's a great question. Friends, if you have any possible explanations, because I know there's like huge backstories about each of the artifacts that he has. He has so many of them. It's so hard to trace down the old world books for them. If you have a more definitive answer as to how he can take blessings and not show any negative side effects, leave in the comments down below. Me and Brian would love to know, because it's a question that I think is fundamental to understanding Archaon, but also just the path to glory in general, as he is one of many champions walking along it. So leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to read them and I'll respond to you there. Thank you all so much, and a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.